In the quiet Midwest, some secrets hide in plain sight. Tonight, we uncover one of the darkest, a story of loneliness, obsession, and a man whose quiet life masked unimaginable horrors. This is the world of Ed Gein. Welcome to Late Night Mysteries. In the forgotten town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, the winters came early and overstayed their welcome. Snow blanketed the farmlands for months, muffling every sound, and the wind carried a constant low hum, the kind that made you feel watched. Plainfield was the kind of place where time seemed to stop, where everyone knew everyone, and strangers rarely passed through. And on the edge of that quiet, isolated town stood a farmhouse that would soon become one of the most infamous places in American history. It was the home of a man named Edward Gein. Ed was polite, reserved, and almost painfully shy. To the people of Plainfield, he was harmless, a lonely bachelor who helped neighbors with odd jobs, fixed fences, and watched their children when asked. He smiled softly when spoken to, and when he laughed, it was never louder than a whisper. But those who looked closely noticed something unsettling. His eyes never quite focused on the person in front of him. It was as if he was listening to something else, something only he could hear. Ed had grown up under the iron rule of his mother, Augusta, a woman whose faith twisted into fanaticism. She despised sin, despised women, and despised the world itself. Every evening she preached to Ed and his brother about the wickedness of mankind, the filth of desire and the purity of obedience. When she died, something inside Ed broke in silence. He sealed her bedroom, kept it pristine as if frozen in time, and let the rest of the house decay. Neighbors noticed how he stopped coming into town as often, how his hands grew rough and his clothes more ragged. At night, a lantern glow could sometimes be seen moving across his fields, drifting, flickering, never still. As the years passed, Plainfield began to change, businesses closed. Families moved away, yet the few who remained couldn't shake the feeling that something hung over the town, a heaviness that seemed to come from that lonely farm. People began disappearing. First a tavern owner, last seen locking up late one evening, then a hardware store clerk, a woman who had spoken with Ed just before she vanished. No one wanted to believe something sinister was happening. This was Plainfield. Nothing happened here. But behind closed doors, the whispers began. They said Ed had been visiting the graveyard at night, muttering to himself among the tombstones. Some swore they'd seen him carrying tools into the woods. Others claimed to hear strange noises coming from his barn, low, rhythmic, like chanting or crying. The sheriff dismissed it all as small-town gossip. But the air of fear thickened. Parents began calling their children in before dark. The road past the game property grew deserted. Even the mail carriers stopped lingering when they dropped off letters. The farmhouse sat silent and sagging, its windows black like empty eyes, watching. Then came November 16th, 1957. The first snow had fallen, blanketing the town in white. That morning, the hardware store on Main Street never opened. A customer found the door locked, the lights still on inside. The cash drawer was open and a trail of dark footprints led out the back door into the snow. The police followed them mile after mile until they ended at Ed Gein's property. No one expected what they would find. The house was still. The front door creaked open to reveal a darkness so heavy it felt alive. The air smelled of dust, decay, and something faintly metallic. The officers stepped inside, flashlights trembling in their hands. The beam of light moved across piles of newspapers, rotting furniture, and walls covered in objects that made no sense. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. When one of the deputies pulled back a curtain, he froze. His scream brought the others running. What they saw inside that house could never truly be written down. Official reports used words like artifacts, objects of human origin, grave robbery. But the truth was far beyond anything they had imagined. It was as if Ed had been trying to build a world of his own, one where life and death blurred together, where the dead could be made to live again. When they brought him in, Ed didn't resist. He sat quietly, hands folded, as if relieved that it was finally over. During questioning, his voice was calm, almost gentle. He told them he had visited the graveyard often, that he felt drawn there by something stronger than himself. He spoke about his mother as though she were still alive, watching him, guiding his hands. He admitted to taking things from graves, to borrowing, he said as if it were an innocent act. I just wanted to be close to her again, he murmured, his eyes distant. I wanted to keep her near me. The psychiatrists who examined him called it delusion, psychosis, necrophilia, schizophrenia. But none of those words captured the full horror of what had happened inside that farmhouse. Ed Gein wasn't driven by rage or lust. He was driven by loneliness, by a desperate, hollow yearning that twisted his mind into something unrecognizable. He wasn't a monster in the way the world expected. He was something far more terrifying. A man who couldn't let go of love, even when it rotted into madness. His trial was brief. The evidence was overwhelming, though the full extent of it never reached the newspapers. The jury found him insane, and the judge agreed. Ed Gein was sent to a state hospital where he would live out the rest of his days under constant supervision. Those who spoke with him there said he was polite, even kind, that he smiled often and talked about his mother as though she might walk through the door at any moment. Back in Plainfield, the Gein farm became a place of nightmares. Teenagers dared each other to visit the property, but few made it past the gate. Locals said the land itself felt wrong, heavy, cursed. One night, the farmhouse burned to the ground. Whether by accident, lightning, or something darker, no one knew. No one rebuilt. The field grew wild with weeds and silence, but the legend never died. Plainfield became synonymous with evil, a word whispered in documentaries, crime books, and films. The image of Ed Gein seeped into Hollywood, giving birth to the killers who came after. Norman Bates, Leatherface, Buffalo Bill. They were fiction, but the seed that inspired them was real. It came from that lonely man on the edge of a quiet town, a man whose darkness had been growing unnoticed for years. To this day, if you drive down those old Wisconsin back roads, the fields still look the same, cold, endless, and silent. Locals say that on foggy nights, a single light sometimes moves between the trees, slow and deliberate, like a lantern swaying in the wind. Some say it's just hunters or pranksters. Others whisper that it's Ed himself, still wandering those fields, still searching for what he lost so long ago. Because the truth about evil is that it rarely screams. It whispers. It hides in the ordinary. It wears the face of a man you might nod to at the grocery store, the neighbor who fixes your roof, the quiet soul who waves from across the street. Evil can live anywhere, even in a place like Plainfield, where the snow falls gently and the silence never ends. And so, when the night grows still and the wind hums low through the trees, remember this: monsters aren't born in the dark. They are made there, slowly, quietly, one lonely night at a time,